Welcome everyone. In this captivating video, we'll delve into 5 chilling true crime stories that will linger in your thoughts and give you goosebumps. These tales of darkness, deceit, and hopelessness are not for those easily frightened. Once you've experienced them, you'll be captivated and unable to look away, even though you may never want to listen again. So, let's begin our journey into these gripping stories. Armin Meiwes, also known as the Rotenburg Cannibal, or the Polite Cannibal, infamously killed and ate a man he met online. Meiwes had been searching for a willing victim for years, and eventually found Bernd Jürgen Brandes, who agreed to be killed and eaten. The two men met at Meiwes' home, where Brandes agreed to have his penis cut off and eaten by Meiwes before being killed and eaten over several months. Meiwes was eventually caught and sentenced to life in prison. Meiwes had a troubled childhood, with his father abandoning him when he was 8 years old, leaving him to be raised by his mother. During sessions with police experts, Meiwes explained that his desire for cannibalism, related to the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, had developed during his adolescent years. The unprecedented case has proved problematic for German lawyers, who discovered that cannibalism is not illegal in Germany. Meiwes supposedly regrets his actions, and even stated that he wanted to write a biography with his victim's family. He has been allowed out of prison for several brief, supervised excursions, wearing sunglasses and a cap to protect his identity. The Dnipropetrovsk maniacs, Viktor Sayenko and Igor Suprunyuk, were two 19-year-old locals from Ukraine who terrorized the city of Dnipropetrovsk in June and July 2007. They were responsible for a series of brutal murders, targeting mostly women but also men and children. Shockingly, they even recorded some of their heinous acts, with one of the videos eventually finding its way onto the internet. These horrific crimes resulted in the duo being charged with 21 murders and convicted of premeditated murder and animal cruelty. As a consequence, Sayenko and Suprunyuk were sentenced to life imprisonment. It is worth noting that these killings were not only driven by a desire for thrill, but also involved robbery and enucleation. It is truly disturbing to think that these acts were motivated by their own twisted attempts to confront their phobias. Perhaps seeking therapy would have been a more appropriate course of action for them.
Bruce McArthur, a former mall Santa Claus and self-employed landscaper, was a Canadian serial killer who terrorized Toronto's gay village between 2010 and 2017. His heinous acts claimed the lives of 8 men, most of whom were immigrants from the Middle East or South Asia, and members of the LGBTQ+ community in Toronto. On January 18, 2018, McArthur was apprehended and subsequently charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Shockingly, he pleaded guilty to all 8 counts on January 29, 2019. As a result, McArthur was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Throughout the investigation, it was discovered that McArthur had utilized his landscaping business as a means to conceal the remains of his victims. The search for evidence spanned various locations and involved an unprecedented collaboration between the Toronto Police Service, Ontario Provincial Police, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and other law enforcement and forensic agencies.
And he suggested doing in the back of his truck, since it hadn't been used yet. It was a brand new truck. I said, well, there's more room in the back of my van. So we went to my van. So then I thought, okay, he likes it rough. So I put my hand to his throat, and just for a few seconds, because before that he's very strong, he just completely turned around and grabbed me by the throat. He said, now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to you. And he had me by the throat to the point that I couldn't breathe. So I put my hands up in the air like surrender, because I couldn't talk. And that's when he finally let go. And then he jumped out of the car. He said, I don't want to see you again.
The Fritzl case is a horrifying story that revolves around Joseph Fritzl, an Austrian man who committed unspeakable acts against his own daughter, Elizabeth, for a period of 24 years. It all began when Elizabeth was just 11 years old, and her father started sexually assaulting her. In 1984, when Elizabeth turned 18, Fritzl tricked her into the basement of their family home, where he had constructed a soundproofed room. He drugged and imprisoned her there, subjecting her to repeated rape and sexual abuse. Tragically, Elizabeth gave birth to 7 children during her captivity, with one of them dying shortly after birth. The shocking truth of Fritzl's crimes came to light in 2008, when one of Elizabeth's children fell seriously ill and required medical attention. Following his arrest, Fritzl faced charges of rape, incest, false imprisonment, and even murder by negligence. He pleaded guilty to all counts and was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In order to protect Elizabeth and her children, they were given new identities and relocated to a secret location within Austria. The impact of the Fritzl case extended beyond the personal tragedy suffered by Elizabeth and her children. It prompted significant changes within the Austrian legal system. As a result of this case, a new charge of enslavement was introduced into Austrian law to address the issue of human trafficking. Additionally, the case sparked a debate regarding the leniency of Europe's penal system and whether adopting harsher sentencing guidelines, similar to those in the United States, could serve as a deterrent against such heinous crimes. David Parker Ray, also known as the Toy Box Killer, was a notorious American serial killer and rapist who terrorized women in the 1990s. He was convicted of kidnapping, rape, and torture, and was suspected of murdering multiple women. Ray's crimes were particularly heinous, and he is infamous for constructing a soundproofed torture chamber in a trailer on his property, which he referred to as his toy box. Ray would abduct women and take them to his torture chamber, where he would subject them to unspeakable acts of violence and sexual abuse for days or even weeks. His victims were often drugged and subjected to various forms of torture, including electric shocks, beatings, and sexual assault. Ray was finally apprehended in 1999, after one of his victims managed to escape and report him to the authorities. He was sentenced to 223 years in prison for his crimes, while his accomplices, Cindy Hendy and Roy Yancey, were also convicted for their roles in his atrocities. Ray died in custody on May 28, 2002.